Okay, hello, I'm Ishan Aziz. I'm doing my AS Media Studies blog evaluation of my opening sequence. In this video, I'm just discussing the first question. In what way does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? So I'm basically just going to discuss conventions of media products and opening sequences, how my sequence conforms to them, develops them, or breaks them entirely. So, for a lot of elements, a lot of those less central elements to my film are mainly just generic, like the title, the setting and location, costumes and props. All those things are, none of them are really overly unusual or noticeable. One thing I could say about the costumes and props is I specifically chose a collared shirt that looks kind of smart to emphasize how structured this person's life is, in that, even though it's not an active structure, it's just sort of a lackadaisical structure that they've fallen into. So the fact that I'm trying to bring meaning to it might make it less conventional. However, I don't know, generally, costume I wanted to keep conventional. Unconventional costumes and props, you would mainly see someone challenging convention in those areas in something like sci-fi, or, well, actually, you could say maybe like comedies, I feel more TV comedies, like, these days you get a lot, film comedies are normally just sort of just trying to put characters in place where they can set up jokes. There's not a big focus on environment and sort of using a lot of different elements to establish a comedic tone. I don't know, people like that. There's a lot of us on a TV comedy. They like the one I analyzed, the second season of Community, the opening sequence I analyzed that. They use costumes and props like really well in that because there's this horizontal tracking shot or panning shot, I'm not sure, across all these characters' rooms, and in each one there's clear the color scheme and all the items in their room and what they're wearing clearly infers almost like a large amount of like what you need to know about the characters and the way they think, the way they are. Like you have Abed, who loves TV. You have all his DVDs on the wall. You have Troy, he's kind of a idiotic man-child, and he's wearing Spider-Man PJs. And yeah, you don't get a whole lot of that in film though, really, because it's a very overt way of showing character, and it's sort of almost cartoonish, which is something Community is sort of famous for, just being this hybrid cartoon of a television show. You don't get a ton of films challenging conventions in terms of title, and I know one example I can think of is maybe The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. You could say that that's challenging convention because it's a very overlong title. It's not snappy and attention-grabbing like many titles are. Many titles are intended to be. It's sort of overlong and sort of gives a tone, and sort of almost like a mission statement for the film. Setting and location, some films, some films definitely challenge conventions. For example, out of the films I analysed, we have WALL-E is set on this dystopian future world, which you could say is unconventional because the setting is a big part of the film. It's like that makes you go, oh, this is interesting, this is new, this is scary, this is comedic when they combine it with the soundtrack. So that's definitely interesting. You could also say that the setting to something like Children of Men is unconventional because it's a twist on it's not overtly unusual, but there's like these elements that show that it's a lot dark. The use of filter, I think, is a big thing, that there's these elements that show it's like this twisted future, which is a lot darker, just not as overtly as a lot of films would make it so. Camera work and editing is possibly where I think my film strays to the least conventional sort of style, and I think it works well for this. And this ties into story and how I establish it, and genre and how I establish it, and characters and how I establish it. So I'll talk about them all together. So if you've seen the film, it's on the blog somewhere. You'll see that the editing and the way the camera is used, I was intentionally trying to make it feel as if time in this sort of film and this person's life is just slipping by them without them really noticing, without them comprehending. There's no transition shots of them moving from one place to the other. It's just them in these different places, like that these like repeated sort of like places around their house, and them just being static there and not finding new experience or anything. And just as this repeats and repeats, they begin to notice less and less, because that's an interesting sort of psychological phenomenon I thought I could explore with the editing, is when you just do the same thing over and over again, you start to notice less, and time begins to pass quicker in your mind because you're processing less new information. So yeah, I did this. They're almost essentially like jump cuts, uh, where I don't really give any ceremony to any things he does by putting him through different, uh, transitions from shot to shot, and also the camera. That's just the editing. The camera work. I also none of the shots have any. I think two of the shots have movement in them. The rest of them are like on a tripod. I stuck them down. I didn't move the shot because I just wanted to show a complete stillness in a person's lifestyle, and that they don't have any sort of, just to show that when this person is like being lethargic and stuck in the same rut, the camera is too. It's stuck in the same place. It's not moving and transitioning from shot to shot. I also begin and end in the same shot, which I think shows the cycle well. I think so this ties into story and genre and characters, because in most opening sequences you will see the writers and directors sort of explore those things the most. They want to set up a story, they want to set up a character, they want to set up tone, which I would say tone before genre, really, because genre can go back and forth, but the tone is what they're really trying to establish. And for my film, I feel like this mainly focused almost entirely on character, somewhat on tone, but I feel like the tone set in this opening sequence will definitely not be the tone that exists through the entire film, because I want to put this character through new experiences and stuff as the film goes on. Through the camera work and the editing, as I've said, I established this character as someone who has this kind of empty life where they don't do anything, they're not active, they're just lethargic and just completely stationary. And this is pretty heavily inferred through just the general, there's no dialogue or anything, it's just them sitting and, I don't know, watching TV or whatever, and they're not, So the character, I think, is well established. The audience gets, through the camera work, which is just skipping through this person's life, I think the audience can grasp that this is someone who's not finding anything new in their life, and they're just falling through this cyclical sort of abyss. So the character was heavily established, I feel. And something I wanted to do, however, was not really take any steps to establish a story, other than establishing the character, who will definitely be part of the story. Because because the entire point of this opening sequence is to show lack of event, and a continuous lack of event that this sort of person almost suffers through. And so I feel in order to do that, I had to establish the character before I showed any sort of interesting details about their life. It had to be sort of a very boring life from the beginning, so it just has this 2 minutes of at the opening of the film where it's just sort of this static lifestyle, as I've mentioned. The tone of the character has sort of been established, but apart from that, no real genre has been sort of selected for this. I think it will sort of be like a character study, a character going through a change, like a metamorphosis, I guess. But no precise, like the genre of that transformation and the rest of the film has not really been inferred. And again, this is sort of intentional. I didn't want to create anything really exciting and interesting to happen in this first sequence. I just wanted kind of just this methodical, cyclical nature to the film. And so I guess going back through these things, the main ideas that my opening sequence challenges are the ones about camera work and editing, and then the three establishing things, the tone, character, and genre. So, and like I mentioned, in most opening sequences, you will get a filmmaker trying to establish those three things in some way. They will normally focus on one or the other, but rarely do they just omit one. So I guess you could say that I'm challenging that sort of convention of having to explore those three things and instead opting to do one in a more heavier fashion, and the omission of the others is part of my establishment of character. I feel this draws similarities to perhaps the opening sequence of the Netflix show Better Call Saul, the prequel to Breaking Bad. The opening sequence of that is really great. It's we just see this character Saul, and they're working at a Cinnabon, I think, and it's entirely in black and white. I think this is sort of a similarity to my film. My film, the beginning is shot in this very unconventional way. The rest of the film won't be, and this is so it's sort of just using sort of a stylized fashion of filmmaking for the opening sequence to establish the stuff, which is the same thing Better Call Saul does. The entire opening sequence of that show is shot in black and white, just to show this sort of dulled lifestyle similar to mine. It's done in a very different way. The progression is sort of similar, seeing as he's going through a day, but there's none of the cyclical nature of a day. And There's more story inferred in that. There is one bit where he sees someone and he is like scared of being recognized, so you infer, oh, he's done something that would make him scared. And but mostly it's just establishing his character, and it is a flash forward, which is another interesting thing because that makes the audience think, oh, how is this character of Saul going to get to this point where they're in this boring life? Mine is more like makes the audience think, okay, where did this character go from here? Seeing as mine would not, it's not a flash forward, it's going to continue from this point of the story and possibly jump forward in time extensively. So yeah, that's another sort of unconventional opening sequence that I draw similarities to. If I look at the other examples of the ones I analysed, you can also see focus on, out of the three elements I mentioned, of establishment in an opening sequence. Take the House of Cards one. There we have a clear focus on tone and character, not much on story. Again, we get a clear idea of the character of Frank, how ruthless he is, but we also get that tone of that clinical nature and the shot and the way it's shot. It's Fincher, so it's clean but it's like dramatic. So we get that tone and we get the character. The other Seven Psychopaths is also an interesting one because that's almost entirely focused on tone. There's very little story. I guess it's an inciting moment for the story. There's no. It's like it takes a while for you to go through the film to realize that the relevance of the opening sequence, and mainly it's just focusing on this comedic, like darkly comic, and sort of ultra-violent tone that the film abides by, and its lack of ceremony for any of the characters, and how, and just how generally hilariously brutal the film is to its characters. We also have Wally, and there's another interesting one. But that one definitely follows conventions in that it shows tone and it shows character and it shows story. We get this world set up that is very central to the story. We're wondering, how has the world become so apocalyptic and rubbishy? And then you get the character of Wally, who's all alone, just the echoing song from his little music box, and he's trundling through the waste, and you get a sense of optimism because he's everything around him's horrible, and he's just all perky and happy. You get the tone of the sort of darkly comic sort of film that it will become. Yeah,